Wow, what a lovely introduction. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I want to thank the Flying Pig Bookstore for hosting this event, and C-SPAN Book TV for broadcasting it, and for everyone for being here. I really am overwhelmed. With 250,000 new titles published each year in the United States, I'm just honored that you're here supporting my book. So let me tell you a little bit about Animal Investigators. And essentially, Animal Investigators is a CSI for wildlife that shows how the world's first and only dedicated wildlife crime lab is helping to solve crimes and save endangered species. And I'm often asked, how did I get the idea for the book? And I wrote Animal Investigators because I was struck by what I call the case of the poisoned pumpkins. And I'd been working in Africa for about 10 years, going back and forth, and one day I was talking to a Tanzanian game warden, and he was telling me about a 10-year-old case where dozens of elephants had mysteriously died around watering holes, and nobody could figure out why, and all of them were missing their coveted ivory tusks. And but at the same time, there was no evidence of gunshot wounds. So at first, the game warden thought that maybe they died of some mysterious disease, or maybe they died naturally and someone had come along and taken their tusks. And the game warden had done some training at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Forensic Lab, and he discovered, with the help of the lab, that poachers had injected these pumpkins, which were a favorite food of the elephants. They'd injected them with agricultural chemicals and then scattered them around the watering holes, and the elephants would eat them and die. And they did this because poison let the poachers slide the tusks out of the elephant's skull, and that was quite a bit easier than the alternative, which was either waiting for the elephant to decompose or hacking them out. And as he tells me this, the phone rings, and when he hangs up, he tells me it was a report of a bunch of hippos who had been poisoned in the same manner for their ivory teeth. And at that moment, I really realized two things. First, that the poisoning for profit wasn't going to stop, and I really wanted to do something about it. And second, that this forensic lab was having an impact even though it wasn't directly involved in this case. And in fact, because of its involvement previously, the game warden would be able to catch the poachers because now he knew what the method was and where to look. And so that's when I really got interested and intrigued and started researching the cases. So in Animal Investigators, I follow 3 true cases from beginning to end. That's from the undercover sting operation, which catches the wildlife traffickers, to the forensic investigation, to the courtroom, or other outcomes. And the first case I cover is Alaskan walrus that were slaughtered for their tusk ivory. And that case is made very complicated by the role of Native Alaskan people whose culture and livelihood is really centered on the hunt and on the walrus. And second is an investigation into the trade in bear gallbladders, which are used in traditional Asian medicine. And third is a look at the world of illegal smuggling of Brazilian Amazon Indian feather art. And this case exploits the native Indians who make it and also threatens jaguars, scarlet macaws, harpy eagles, and other tropical wildlife that's protected. And unfortunately, I had a lot of cases to choose from. And that's because killing wild animals is really a big business. There's a huge wildlife trade that's legal, but a huge black market exists in endangered species. And illegal wildlife smuggling could be worth as much as $20 billion each year. And people say it ranks third behind drugs and weapons trafficking as the third most large black market crime in the world. Now, of course, we don't really know where it ranks or how much it is because smugglers aren't reporting their sales figures, but it's big. That's the bottom line. And the motives for these crimes are really as old as humankind. Passion, politics, ignorance, indifference, and most of all, insatiable greed. The profits are high, often higher than drugs, and the penalties are low. Ounce for ounce, animal products like rhino horn or deer musk can be worth more than gold, diamonds, or cocaine. A kilogram, which is 2.2 pounds, of bear bile has a street value of $40,000, and that's more than cocaine, which costs $30,000. It's amazing what you learn in this job. And rhino horn's worth $50,000 per kilo. So, the species and products really run the gamut, from insects to tigers. A pair of bird-winged butterflies can go for $8,500. A pair of black palm cockatoos can fetch up to $80,000. So it's big bucks, and the scale is massive. In fact, just a few weeks ago, there was an undercover sting run by Interpol and the Brazilian Federal Police, and it broke up a ring of traffickers in macaws and other tropical species of over 70 people. And this one ring alone was trafficking 500,000 animals per year and earning $20 million. So it's big. But at the same time, the penalties for wildlife trafficking are low compared to drug trafficking. The maximum penalty for a felony wildlife conviction under the Lacey Act is 5 years in prison and $250,000. And most of the time, people don't get anywhere near that. And by comparison, for simple possession with intent to sell cocaine, the maximum is 20 years in prison and $1 million, and it goes up from there. So simple economics, high profits, low risks, has prompted everyone to get into the game, from petty criminals to organized crime networks to military juntas to international terrorists. And for the animals, the problem is that it's plundering species which are already under threat, and they're least able to withstand the losses. Right now, we're losing about 30,000 plant and animal species per year. That's 3 species per hour. And estimates are that 1 in 4 mammals, 1 in 8 birds, 1 in 3 amphibians face a high risk of extinction soon from human activities. And wildlife trafficking contributes to and hastens those very trends. As one agent here in Vermont put it, nobody is trafficking in sparrows. The more rare the animal, the more likely someone wants it, and the more willing someone is to sell it. And believe it or not, the United States is both a big supplier of illicit wildlife and wildlife products, and a big consumer. In fact, experts say we're probably the second largest consumer after China. So it's big, it's here, and it matters. There's a lot that goes on there's a lot that goes into catching traffickers. And I detail it in Animal Investigators, and the special agents and scientists that I feature are really an important part of the process. And I'm going to focus a little bit on the forensics here. And we're all familiar with crime shows like CSI, so we have this image of forensics and what it is. And human and wildlife forensics are similar in that both use science to answer a legal question. That's the basics of forensics. But for wildlife forensic scientists, it's not your average day job. Let me give you an example. One of the cases I look at is a case where hundreds of headless walrus were washing up on the beaches in northwest Alaska. And the lab was called in to see if there was a crime. Now, traditionally, almost every part of the walrus is used. The meat for food, the hide for boats, the ivory has always been for tools, carvings, and also a means of exchange, a source of money. And it's legal to kill them if it's for subsistence and not in a manner that's wasteful. So when native hunters saw walrus after headless walrus on the beaches, they were upset. They believed the walrus gifted themselves to the hunters of their choosing, and that this sacrifice really was an act of sharing and rebirth. And they believed that if you didn't respect the walrus, they would go away. So to see this waste, they feared the animals would leave, headhunted to extinction by the very people who depended on them. But was there a crime? Taking just the tusks may or may not be illegal. The walrus might have died naturally and then washed ashore, or they might have been, shot during a hunt, but lost in the, unable to be recovered. And then the tusk would have been the only thing that was salvageable on the beach.